Alright, so we'll say good morning. Today's daf is daf Samich, page 60. We are going to pick up on Nuntes, Amud Beis 59b. We're going to pick up Amar Rav Masna, which is the right business law. So Amar Rav Masna, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 lines up from the bottom. The shir this morning is dedicated by Alan Wiseman in commemoration of the yahrzeit of his father-in-law, Mr. Charles Newman Zachariah and Yisrael Tzvi, and in honor of Alan's grandson, Zachariah Wiseman's recent bar mitzvah, who's named for his great-grandfather. We should hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, the neshama has an aliyah, and the family has incredible nachas from the Bachar HaBar Mitzvah. Okay, so let's pick up. So says the Gemara, Amar Rav Masna. So remember again, we're talking about the Mishnah began to discuss the idea of things that we do, mipnei darkei shalom. So remember again, as opposed to mipnei tikkun olam that we had in the previous Mishnah or Mishnayos, now we're talking about darkei shalom, things that are there to preserve internal communal peace. So the piece that we're focusing on now is the fact that the Kohen gets the first aliyah, Levi gets the second aliyah, and after that are Yisraelim. And all of this ultimately again is to preserve the peace, to preserve the shalom within Klal Yisrael. So Amar Rav Masna, Hada Amrit Beis HaKnesses, Lo Amar Ela B'Shabbos Yomim Tovim. The Shchichi Radma, Val B'Sheni U'B'Chamishi, Lo. So Rav Masna says something very interesting. This which we said, that a Kohen cannot yield, meaning that the Kohen cannot say to someone else, no, you take the first aliyah, that the order is set. That's only first of all in Shul and Beis HaKnesses, and that's only on Shabbos and Yom Tiv. Because Shabbos and Yom Tiv, there's a lot of people, and when there's a lot of people, there might be a lot of people vying for kibudim, and therefore that's where they're concerned that if the Kohen starts to yield, so what could happen? You could have a situation where there's machlokes. However, again, during the week, a Kohen has the ability to yield if he wants to, because there aren't as many people in Shul, and therefore, again, the concern for machlokes is a bit less. So the Gemara says, "Ini, is that true?" But yet Rav Huna Bosai, who was not a Kohen, used to get the first aliyah, the Kohen aliyah, on Shabbos and Yom Tov in Shul. So it's in Rav Bosai, and Rav Kahana, we're going to see, was a great Talmud Chacham. So apparently it appears that you can yield to someone other than a Kohen, or I should say a Kohen could yield even on Shabbos Yom Tov, to which the Gemara says, no. Shani Rav Huna, Da'afilu Rabbi Ami, Rabbi Asi, Kohani, Chashiv, D'Eretz Yisrael, make of Havu Kaifile. Rav Huna is different, I will say. Rav Huna was the Gadol Hadar. Because even Rabbi Ami and Rabbi Asi, who were again themselves great Rabbanim and Kohanim, and amongst the most important individuals in Eretz Yisrael, were subordinate to Rav Huna. So when somebody is such a recognized leader, such a recognized Gadol, so apparently there is some level of license to go ahead and yield to that individual, which also makes sense. The reason it makes sense is because what are we concerned about? So if Aaron our Kohen yields, Aaron's getting the first aliyah, and he decides to yield to me. So if he yields to me, someone's going to say, why is he yielding to silver? If he could yield to silver, I can get it also. That's what this machlokes. What the Gemara is suggesting is, if the Kohen ever yields to the Gadol Hadar, so, if Aaron were to yield to Rav Moshe, right, so then again, no one's going to say, if Moshe could get that aliyah, I can get that aliyah. Because again, it's clear, at the end of the day, that person is a Gadol, to which the Gemara is saying, okay, so Rav Huna is different. Rav Huna was the Gadol, and therefore, by definition, there was not a problem to yield to him. Amra Abaye. So we'll say, this is very halacha l'maisa. Amra Abaye, Naktinan, we learned, Ein Sham Kohen, Nispar de Chavila. If there is no Kohen there, then literally again the robe unravels. Also, which is another way of saying that the order of Kohen Levi Yisrael is predicated on having a Kohen first. If there is no Kohen, then there is no rest of the order. This is a very common misconception that people think that if there is no Kohen, you give the first aliyah to the Levi. It's not true. Once there is no Kohen, then it's all bets are off. There is no order anymore. Anyone can get. You can give a Levi that first aliyah if you want to, but you could also give a Yisrael that first aliyah. Meaning, once the Kohen is not there, Rashi says, Nisparda chavila, nifsak hakesher, literally the knot has come undone. Ibeit halevi es kvodo, b'shel chavila sanifredes, ve'ino kori klas. So Rashi's first understanding over here is that where there's no Kohen, remember, the Levi, this is no offense to the Levium, but the cover of the Levium is a derivative of Kohanic covered. So if there is no Kohanic covered, meaning if there's no Kohen there, then by definition there's no specific honor according to the Levium. So Rashi's first understanding of Mispar de Chavila is if there's no Kohen, then ultimately again the Levi doesn't get an aliyah at all. Kach Amar Mori is Zakein, Mori Rabbi Yitzchak ben Yehuda, v'chein Siddur Rav Amram, aval mitamidei Mori Rabbi Yitzchak, Halevi Shamati Mishmo, she'ein Seidur l'davar, lahaktim Levi Yisrael misheyer yaktim. So we'll say, so Rashi has two versions as to what Mispar de Chavila means. According to the first version, Mispar de Chavila means we do not give the Levi an aliyah. Meaning, if there's no Kohen, the Levi does not get an aliyah. According to the second version, what it means is you don't have to give the Levi an aliyah. Meaning, there is no order, and therefore, halacha l'maisa, whoever you want to give an aliyah to, you have that ability. V'amar Abaye nachtinon. Abaye said, furthermore, we learned, ein sham Levi kori Kohen. If there's no Levi there, you call up a Kohen for the Levi aliyah. Ini, is that so? You should never call up one Kohen after another. Why not? Because here's the problem. If you call up one Kohen after the other, then it looks like what? It looks like you found out that there was some kind of genealogical problem with the first Kohen, and therefore again he's not really a Kohen, before we called up the second guy to be the real Kohen. Levi achar Levi lo yikra. Similarly, you can't go ahead and call up a Levi after a Levi. Why? Mishum pegam shnehem. Because ultimately, you are casting aspersions. You are casting aspersions on the lineage of both of them. So Rashi says over here, Lo yadi inshi pegama b'haimina v'yam rishon eno levi l'ficha chazer v'kar levi ina mishneim sheni eno levi el Yisrael. So we'll say, so if you call up Levi after Levi, if you call up Kohen after Kohen, it casts aspersions on the lineage of the first one. If you call up Levi after Levi, it casts aspersions on both of them. Maybe the first one wasn't a Levi, and therefore you're calling up the second one. Maybe the first one was a Levi, and you're calling up the second one because he's not really a Levi, he's a Yisrael. So says the Gemara. So therefore, again, how could the Gemara say before that if there is no Levi, that you call up a Kohen for the second Aliyah? Oh, to which the Gemara says, Ki Kaminon Ba'osa Kohen. Or I will say what it means is that if there is no Levi, it doesn't mean we call up a second Kohen. Rather, what does it mean? We say that same Kohen who had the first Aliyah, he stays up for the Levi Aliyah as well. So the Gemara says, Maishna, and I will say, again, this is all halacha l'maisa. Maishna Levi achar Levi di'ika pegam shnehem. Why is that if you call Levi after a Levi, the Gemara is concerned that you've cast aspersions on both of on the lineage of both of them. Because we're concerned that somebody's going to say one of them is not a Levi. Why don't you say the same thing? Kohen achar Kohen nami. Amri chad minayu lav Kohen. Why don't you say the same thing? Shabbos saying the Kohen achar Kohen. What's interesting is the concern is people automatically assume that the first guy is not a Kohen. Well, why don't you say that a Kohen achar Kohen? The concern is also not both of them. Maybe people will say the second guy is not a Kohen. To which the Gemara says, "Kigon de muchsak lan bavua da haisheni de Kohenu." The case that we're dealing with is where everyone knows that the guy, the second Kohen called up, he has a chazaka that he's a Kohen. We know that his father is a Kohen. But you can make it. Why don't you say something by the Levi case that the Levi achar Levi is where the second Levi, his father is also muchsak as a Kohen. Ella amri mamzeres onasina nasif upasli lazare. Rather, what we are concerned about is that what maybe the father married someone he's not allowed to, and therefore disqualified his offspring. So say the same thing by the Kohen. Maybe the first one went ahead and his father married a grusha chalus and therefore disqualified the offspring. Sof Levi mikahavi. So we'll say again. So here's the interesting idea. If the father of a Kohen messes up and marries somebody he's not allowed to, the offspring of say it's not the pshat that if you're messed up genealogically as a Kohen, then all right, you're second best, you become a Levi. In other words, that once he's disqualified from being a Kohen, that genealogical disqualification takes away all membership, so to speak, within Shevet Levi. Ulaman. And who are we concerned about over? So we'll say, now essentially what we have is, you can't call up two Kohanim successively because we're concerned that you're going to cast aspersions on the first. You can't call up a Levi achar Levi because we're concerned you're going to cast aspersions on both of them. Now we'll say, who are we worried about? Meaning, so the Gemara says, Ulaman, Ilioshvin hakachazule. So we'll say if the people who are in the shul, so they see what's going on. Rashi says hakachazule lahai koin rishon the sakum yeshiva. And we'll say now if it's the people in the shul, so they see what's going on, and see we'll say here's the chap. How do you know that? How will they know that ultimately again there's no genealogical problem when they see that both kohanim who are called up are both considered to be part of the order of the seven? They'll recognize ultimately again that both in fact are genealogically fit. So who are we concerned about? Ella Liotzin. We'll say, who are we concerned about? For the group we're normally concerned about, the people who leave shul early. So the people who leave shul early, they only see part of the picture. So if they go ahead and they see two kohanim one after the other, but they don't see that those both of them counted as part of the seven aliyos, they will assume that the second one was called up because the first one was genealogically disqualified. Shalchuli b'nigli l'Rebbi Chalba. Acharehen mikar. So now this is a very interesting discussion. So now that we've established the proper order for Kohen Levi, who should get the third aliyah? Meaning now what's the precedence for Yisraelim? So we've established there's a precedence Kohen Levi Yisrael within the camp of Yisraelim, who ultimately again gets the first aliyah. When we say first aliyah, we're really referring over here to the third aliyah, to shlishi and on. So the Gemara says, Lo havi biyadei. He didn't know the answer to this. Asa v'shayl Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha. He went to ask Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha. And Rabbi Yitzchak said the following, this is amazing. Achareyan korin Talmidei Chachamim hamamunim parnasim al tzibor. So we'll say, so after Kohen Levi, who's next? Who the first Yisraelim that should get an aliyah? Talmidei Chachamim, who have leadership positions. We'll say now, understand what Chazal are expressing over here, and this is quite amazing. Being a Talmid Chacham is very nice, is a very important thing. But what's important is to be a Talmid Chacham who serves the community. So therefore, again, who gets shlishi? Not the greatest Talmid Chacham. Isn't that interesting? Who gets shlishi? The Talmidei Chachamim who serve the community. They get shlishi. Next, v'acharein, who's after them? Talmidei Chachamim ha'ru'uyin l'nosa parnasim al tzibor. After them are Talmidei Chachamim who are fit to be appointed to leadership positions, but are not occupying those leadership positions. Next, v'acharein, b'nei Talmidei Chachamim she'avosei me'unim parnasim al tzibor. After them are the children whose fathers are Talmidei Chachamim in leadership positions. After them, B'acharein Rashi Knesios, lay leaders. Lay leaders are both sides. So people again, with the executive board, and then after that again the general board, the lay leaders, the people who participate again in the community, the Chol Adam, and then after them everyone else. So we'll say it's amazing, by the way, how important at least the Gabi Kriyas Torah is measured by one's involvement in community. So if you're a Talmid Chacham involved in community, you go first, and we work our way down the leadership chain. Shalchulei b'nei Gal Rabbi Chalbo, Mal Likros b'Chumashim Beis HaKnesses b'Tzibor. So the Bnei Galil sent Rabbi Chalbo the following question: can we read from Chumashim in Shalom Abos? Now, what are Chumashim? Rashi says, Chumashim sheyesh shekosvin lahan chamisha Chumashim kol chumash echad shalim latzmo. So what would they do? So remember, you can't write a Sefer Torah for every single person. So what do they have? The same way that I have a Chumash Bereshis, Chumash Shmos. They wrote a scroll of Bereshis, a scroll of Shmos. So this is Parashas Truma. Is it okay if we just take out the Shmos scroll and read that B'tzibor? Can we do Kriyas HaTorah from that? So the Gemara says, Lo hava biyadei. So he didn't know the answer. Asa shayl Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha. So they came and they asked Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha, Lo hava biyadei. He didn't know either. So Asa shayl bei midrasha. So they came and they asked in the base medrash, Upashtu ameha, Domer Shomar Nachmani, Am Rabbi Yochanan. Sefer Torah, Shechasi Yiriyah Achas, in Korinbo. So we'll say they answered this question through another ruling. That the Shlomo Bar Nachmani says, in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, that if you have a Sefer Torah that's missing a section, you may not go ahead and read from it. Now, the assumption over here is what? If a Sefer Torah that's missing a section is not fit for Kriya, then what? It's not kosher for Kriya B'tzibor, then what? Then certainly a scroll that only has one chumash in it is also not going to be fit for use in the tzibor. To which the Gemara says, no, that's not a good answer, and I'll tell you why. Velohi hasam mechsar b'milsei. Hacha lo mechsar b'milsei. Both say there's a fundamental distinction, which is what? You see, the Sefer Torah that's missing a section is deficient. So I understand why you can't read from a deficient scroll, but tzibor. We'll say when you have a Shmos scroll, what's the chap over here? It's not deficient. it's complete for what it's supposed to be complete with. Meaning, we don't call it deficient because it doesn't have the other four chamishe chamishe Torah. Why don't we call that deficient? Because that's not its purpose, right? Its purpose is just to be the scroll, ultimately, again, for one chumash. Therefore, perhaps you should be able to read from it. Rav Yossi Tarvaihu. Ein korin b'chumashim b'beis hakneses. So Rabbi and Rabbi Yossi both said, no, we do not read from chumash. Rabbi Yossi, again, remember, a chumash in this context means a scroll of one sefer of the chumash. Why? Mishum kavarat tzibor. Because Rabbi Yossi, ultimately, again, this is not proper kavarat tzibor. Not proper honesty. For the proper kavod of the tzibor, you should read from a proper sefer Torah. For Rabbi and Rabbi Yossi, Tarvaihu, high sefer avtarta, asr lemikri b'Shabbos. Folks said, this is very interesting for us. So also they said, you're not supposed to read from a Haftorah book. A book of Haftorah. So we'll say, what do they used to have? Same thing we have today. A scroll that just had Haftorahs. So we'll say, remember again, you could write a scroll with all of the Nevi'im in it. Or you could take each Shabbos, right? Bereshis I take from here, right? Shnoach I take from here. So they had a scroll of Haftorahs. So the Gemara says over here, Rabbi and Rabbi Yosef say, that you should not read from the Haftorah scroll on Shabbos. Why? My taima delo nitan likasev. This is actually interesting because ultimately it's not supposed to be written like that. So what does that mean? So Rashi points out because when recording books of Tanakh, each book is supposed to be recorded in totality, and you're not supposed to record partial sections. So to just go ahead and write down a section of Haftorah is not right. Mar Baravashi Amar Litaltuli Nami Aser. Supposed to say this is why Mar Baravashi is, by the way, also it's muktzah. Right? Not only can you not read from it, because, right, but it's also muktzah. So my timer, the halacha in the mikveh. Supposed to, it's actually interesting. So working backwards, why is it muktzah? Because it's not usable. Since you're not supposed to read from it, therefore again it serves no purpose. Because it serves no purpose, therefore it's muktzah. So Gemara says below, but this is not a correct ruling. Shari l'taltuli v'shari mikveh. You are in fact permitted to go ahead and carry it, and you are in fact permitted to go ahead and read from it. So Rabbi Yochanan v'Reish Lakish ma'ayni b'sifra da'agarata b'Shabbos v'haloni tinei kasef. But we'll say the Rahi is Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish. They used to learn from Agarata on Shabbos. So we'll say, so what's a sefer Agarata? So somebody wrote down the different homiletic teachings. Now we'll say, this is even stronger. Why? Because this is Torah Shebaal Peh. Torah Shebaal Peh is not supposed to be recorded in writing. It's Baal Peh, it's the oral tradition. And yet Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish used to learn from written Agarata on Shabbos. So first of all, it shows us that, remember, the Gemara is comparing this. It's not supposed to be written, but it was written, and therefore, and nevertheless, what? It's not muktzah. To which the Gemara says, Ella, Kevan de lo efshar, Eis lasos lahashem heifaru sorasecha. So we'll say, so why do we allow the writing down of Torah Shebaal Peh? Because there is no alternative. What's the no alternative? Rashi says, Kevan de lo efshar, melichtav shenisma'it halivat Torah mishtachachas. Because we'll say if we don't write down Torah Shebaal Peh, then what happens? It's forgotten. So we'll say because it's forgotten, Eis lasos laHashem, Rashi says again, Vimba lasos takana l'shem shemaim hefaro divrei Torah l'shat tzvicha. So we'll say, so this pasuk again, this pasuk of Eis lasos laHashem hefaro sorasech in Tehillim is a very important pasuk. It's what Chazal darshan, Eis lasos laHashem. There are times that you need to take dramatic action for God, even though that dramatic action sometimes runs contrary to some already established law. Sometimes we have to violate something smaller in order to preserve something bigger. So the same way that although Torah Shebaal Peh is not supposed to be written down, we allowed it to be written down because if not, it will be forgotten. So the Gemara says, "Hachanami kevan dalo efshar eis lasos laHashem heifaru sorasecha." So to over here by the Haftorahs, look at Rashi Hachanami she'ein lechol tzibor v'tzibor yecholes lichtov neviim shalim. So we'll say every tzibor couldn't afford to write a whole sefer of Nach, so therefore they could only afford a sefer of Haftorahs. Therefore, again, because there was no alternative, therefore we did it. So we'll say you should know. This still people, some contemporarily hack about this a little bit. So again, it's different by us because therefore some people are makbet to dafka use an entire nach, right? Although again, if you look at really what the spirit of Chazal are, they're not really arguing in book form. Meaning once you're in book form, you're already in a totally different parasha. They're talking about scroll form. But nevertheless, again, there's absolutely nothing wrong with using the Haftorah book, the Haftorah book, as clearly indicated by the Gemara over here. But again, you could see where there is room to say that perhaps using a full sefer of Nevi'im perhaps could be a little bit preferable. Although again, it's not a clear shot. The reason why it's not a clear shot is because the Gemara is talking about in scroll form. Again, once you get into book form, that's all another discussion. Okay, but when Abai me Rabba, we'll say another interesting idea. So Abai asked from Rabba, Ma'al lichtov migil latinok l'islamid ba. So are you permitted to write down a scroll for a child to learn from it? And Rabba said, now what this means over here is, so I want to teach my child Parashas Noach. Can I just write a Noach scroll? Can I just write a Noach scroll? So Tiboy Lamandar, so we'll say, so this is a separate discussion. What this is asking over here is there some kind of problem with just writing partial parts of the Torah? So the Gemara said the following: Tiboy Lamandar Amr Megillah Nitna. Tiboy Lamandar Amr Torah Chasum Nitna. Both saying, I hear the Gemara is getting into a fundamental machlokes about how the Torah was recorded. Look at Rashi. Megillah Nitna. Kishene'emra Parsha L'Moshaya Kosva. Ulevasof Mem Shani Kishenigmuru Kala Parsha Schibron Begidin B'Tafram. So we'll say the first step is Megillah Nitna means that Moshe Rabbeinu recorded the events of the Torah as they occurred. So if you can imagine again, Moshe Rabbeinu over the course of 40 years is writing on different sections of parchment. And when we get ultimately again to V'zos HaBracha, the end of his life, he ties all the pieces of parchment together, gives that Sefer Torah to the Levium, and that's the Torah. That's Megillah Nitna. He recorded it literally as it was occurring. Versus again, Torah Chasuma Nitna. Rashi says, Lo nichtava ad sof mem la'achar shene'emru kol ha'parshios kulon. Both like Chasuma Nitna means Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't write anything down until the end. Doesn't write anything down until the end. So this shaila, as to whether or not you could write one parsha to teach your child, is a shaila according to both opinions as to how the Torah was recorded. How so? Well, so this is really like, if you think about this, it's a fascinating machlokes. It's a fascinating machlokes about the evolution of Torah. So did Moshe Rabbeinu write it down as it was occurring? I don't know, it's just very exciting to think about this. So the Gemara goes right there. The Gemara says the following. Let's analyze this. So Tibai L'man Amar Torah Megillah Nitna. So if you go according to the opinion, it says Torah was recorded, it was written down piece by piece, Megillah. So Keva de Megillah Nitna. Kosvin. So we'll say, on one hand I could say that since the Torah was originally recorded piecemeal, therefore what? I have the right now to write it down piecemeal. So I could make a scroll for Parashas Noach to give to my kid to learn. Or on the other hand, I could say, Kevan de Idbek. That's true, Torah Megillah Nitna, but now that it's all kind of literally stuck together, meaning once it's completed, you can't write a partial part of the Torah. So Tibai L'man Amar Chasuma Nitna. So again, according to the opinion, it says the Torah was given at once. Moshe Rabbeinu wrote it all down at once. Kevan de Chasuma Nitna in Kosvin. So do we say that since the Torah was given as a unit, therefore you can't write down a partial part of it? Or do we say that again, like we said before, Kevan de lo efshar. Kevan de lo efshar means what? I can't give every single kid his own Torah. It's not practical to do that for a variety of reasons. So what's the alternative? How is the child going to learn Torah? So the only possibility is that we must have the license to record each parsha by itself. To which the Gemara says, Amalei and Kosvin. So the paskin, we cannot record one parsha of the Torah in a scroll. Umatam, and what's the reason? This is great. Lafi she'ein Kosvin. What's the reason we don't do it? Because you can't do it. This sounds like a conversation we've all had with our kids, right? And our parents have had with us. So look at Rashi. Lafi she'ein Kosvin, Rashi says, Ba'afi l'mandar Megillah nitna, kevan de idbik. The idea of what the Gemara is essentially saying is that even if you say the Torah was given piecemeal, it was recorded piecemeal, once the Torah was literally created as a cohesive unit, it can no longer be broken up in different parts. So the Gemara says the following: is that true? Esvei, let's ask a kasha on this. We'll back to our Sota days. Afi asesa tavla shel zav sheparsha sota ksuva alav. We'll say one of the things that Heleni Amalka made was a golden tablet upon which Parsha Sota was written on, so that the Kohen could go ahead and write down Parsha Sota. So what is this an example of? This is a recording of a partial Parsha. So you see over here that they had, remember, the way the Gemara is ending off right now, what the Gemara is trying to say is, you can't write down a Parsha of the Torah by itself. It's either all or nothing. So Gemara says, not true. Heleni Amalka commissioned the creation of this golden tablet that just had Parsha Sota on it and nothing else. So from here you see you can record a partial portion of the Torah. To which the Gemara says, Ba'alef Beis. They didn't actually write Parsha Sota on it. They wrote like the first letters. Aleph Beis means they wrote like the first letters, actually Rashi Tevos, like the first letter of each word to jog the Kohen's memory about how to write Parsha Sota. But yet again, the Brisa says that when the Kohen would write the Parsha Sota to dissolve in the water, he would look at the tablet. Excuse me. And he would see in the tablet what was written there, and that would jog his memory, and he would copy it. So again, it sounds like what? That literally the entire Parsha Sota is written on the tablet. Ema kimasha kasav tabla. It doesn't literally mean that he saw what was written, but rather he saw like the hints that were written on the tablet, and that jogged his memory, like what was written in the parsha. Esvei, again, other kasha kishu kosev aroe betabla v'kosev masha kasav tabla. But yet again, it says explicitly that the Kohen would write the parsha sota. He would look at the golden tablet. He would see what was written there, and he would copy it. So it sounds like again it's written. To which the Gemara says. So what did it say on the tablet? Im shachav, im lo shachav. So hacha b'mayaskinon b'seirigin. So I'll say ultimately again what happened. So the idea is on the tablet it didn't write the full psukim. What it did was it wrote the beginning of the pasuk and the end of the pasuk. The idea is it wrote enough on the tablet to jog the memory of the Kohen without having to write the portion in totality. Therefore, again, this golden tablet in no way shares what we just said earlier, namely, that you can't record one parsha of the Torah by itself. The Gemara says, Kitanai. In reality, this is a machlokes tanoim. So we'll say, you have to understand, this is a major machlokes because this has exceptional educational impact. Right? Because now what we're trying to figure out is the method by which, again, let's be clear, it's not the biggest deal in the world. Meaning the question is, do you need the children to come to shul, to come to the base marriage, take out the Sifrei Torah and learn from the Sifrei Torah? Or again, or is there some possibility for giving each child his own scroll? So Kitanoi, in Kosin Megillah Tinuch Leis Lamidba, you can't write a scroll for a child to learn from. Again, when we say a scroll, we mean a scroll, bless you, that does not possess Chamishei Chumshei Torah. Vim Daito Lahashlim Mutter. So this is very interesting. But if you want to go ahead, if your intent is to at some point in time finish it, then it's mutter. As we'll say, if I'm writing a Sefer Torah and I want to go ahead and start off with Parshas Noach, no, the Parshas Torah you do not have to write in order. So if I want to write the one Parsha first, and my kid's learning Noach, so I'm going to start with that. I'm going to give it to him now, but I'm going to finish it as time goes on. Meaning my goal is to finish the entire Sefer. So the first opinion says that's fine. That's fine. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Huda Omer, Bebereishis Adar HaMabul, B'Toras Konim Ad Vayiba Yom HaShmini. Rabbi Huda, on the other hand, says that what? That Lamaisa, you could write partial sections, but they must be complete. You have to write units. So, for example, if you're going to go ahead and write Bereishis, you have to write Bereishis up until the story of the flood. Why? Because that's called the unit of creation. Similarly, if you're going to write in Sefer Vayikra, you have to write from Vayikra until Parsha Shmini. These are considered to be units. Rabbi Yochanan, Mishra Binar, Torah, Megillah, Megillah Nitna. So we'll say, so again, this is the machlokes as to whether or not you could record partial sections of the Torah. Rabbi Yochanan now goes back and will say, Torah, Megillah, Megillah Nitna. And we'll say, let's go back, because now the Gemara touched on a really important machlokes about how was the Torah given. And I both said, lest you say, well, why is it so important? I mean, it's interesting, but it's not really important. It is important. Why? Because this machlokes really lays the foundation as to how we are able to write scrolls today. So Rabbi Yochanan Mishra Binah says, Torah Megillah Megillah Nitna. Torah was given in portions. In other words, Moshe Rabbeinu recorded it as it occurred. Shnei Amar, as amarti, hine basi b'megillas sefer kasuv alai. This is the interesting raya. The raya is from Sefer Tehillim that David HaMelech calls the Torah a Megillah. So because he calls it a Megillah, the understanding of that is what? That Lemaisa, again, it was recorded in partial form. Moshe Rabbeinu wrote it as it happened. Rav Shimon Lakish Omer, Torah chasuma nitna. Torah was only recorded at the end of Moshe Rabbeinu's life. So remember, Moshe Rabbeinu retained all of the information, and at the end of his life, he wrote it all down together. Shnei Amar, Lakoach es Sefer HaTorah Hazos. That Moshe Rabbeinu tells the Bnei Levi to take the Sefer Torah, which we understand to mean that that's referring, the difference between a Sefer and a Megillah is what? A Megillah is a partial, a Sefer ultimately is a complete item. So therefore take the Sefer, meaning Moshe Rabbeinu only recorded it when it was complete. So v'idach, but the first opinion, what is the first opinion? What does Rabbi Yochanan say about the fact that it says Sefer? Ha'ula basar de'idbik. Okay, it's called the Sefer. When is it called the Sefer? At the end of Moshe Rabbeinu's life, when he takes all the individual Megillas and he connects them together, then what? Then it's called the Sefer. I v'idach nami yakseh b'Megillah Sefer kasav alai. But what does Rabbi Yochanan, what does Reish Lakish do with the fact that David HaMelech calls the Torah a Megillah? Hahu d'chala Torah kula ikra Megillah. No, that's different. That David HaMelech is saying that the entire Torah is also called the Megillah. D'chsiv vayomer Eli ma'ata roeh. What do you see? Vayomer ani roeh Megillah afa. I see a floating Megillah, and in this case over here, the Megillah is a reference to the Torah. So in other words, to which Rabbi Yochanan will say, to which Rabbi Shimon Reish Lakish will say, yes, the Torah is sometimes referred to as a Megillah, but that doesn't tell us anything about how the Torah itself was recorded over time. Alternatively, could refer to what Rabbi Levi said. Rabbi Levi, Shmona Parshas, Ne'em Rabbi Yom Shokam Ba Mishkan. But this is quite interesting. Perhaps also the Megillah idea refers to the fact that at certain points in history, certain parshios were written, even though they were not contiguous parshios. So, for example, on the day that the Mishkan was erected, the following parshios, 8 parshios, were set on that day. And what were they? Elohim, Parshas Kohanim, the Parshas of Kohanim, Parshas Leviim, Parshas Tameim, the halachos of Tum and Tara, Parshas Shiluach Tameim, the halachos of sending the ritually impure out of the camp, Parshas Acharei Mos, of Ol Yom Kippur, Parshas Shtuya Yayin, the laws of drinking wine while or not drinking wine while serving the Beis HaMikdash, Parshas Neros, the laws of the menorah, Parshas Paraduma, the Parsha Paraduma. Amar Belazar, Torah, so we'll say, so again, fine. So for the other possibility, just so you understand what that just was, so the other possibility is when the Torah is referred to as a Megillah, so what's referring to is that on the day of the Mishkan, 8 parashas are given. I will say, understand what that means. So if you hold, this is quite fascinating. If you hold Torah Chasuma Nitna, so the fact that 8 parshios were given on the day that the Mishkan was erected, fine, very interesting. If you hold Torah Megillah Nitna, what that means is what? I will say these 8 parshios are not consecutive in the Torah, which means that what happened is that Moshe Rabbeinu wrote down 8 different sections, kind of put them in his Sefer Torah binder, and then over the course of the next number of years arranged them in their right places, which is quite amazing. Oh, that's interesting. About a mukta mucha, about Torah, maybe it has to do with the fact that we know that Moshe Rabbeinu, if you hold Megillah Nitna, we know that Moshe Rabbeinu wrote down certain things out of a sequential order. I don't know, that's fascinating. All right, that's your homework. All right, good. All right, that's an excellent ta'ara. So I'll say, all right, so let's continue. Weiter. Second line, Samach Hamad Beis. I'm going to have a Lazar. So I'll say, this is also interesting ideas. Torah rov b'chsav u'miyut al peh. The Torah, the majority of what we know is from the text, and a minority is from Torah Shabbat. And I will say, now what does it mean? Take a look at Rashi. Now what does it mean, rov b'chsav? Rov ha-Torah teluya b'medrash sheksuva l'midrash b'klal u'prat u'gzeir shava u'shar midrash ha-Torah nedrash b'ayim. So both say, Sir Belazar is saying that the majority of Torah, the majority of laws that we have, are learned out from the text, applying the Yud Gimel Midos, right? Applying the 13 exegetical principles, right? Of Klal Prat, Gezerah Shava, Binyan Av, all of those things. Umiyut Piksav, Rashi says over here. What does it mean? Umiyut Apeh, Shein Remez Lalamid La Torah El Moshe Emrapeh. So Rabbi says the majority of halachos are learned out by darshaning the text, and the minority of halachos are learned out from what we call halacha l'Moshe Misinai. But Rabbi Yochanan says, Rov al peh, umiyut b'ksav. We'll say, this is interesting. So Rabbi Yochanan says, nope, not true. The majority of the halacha we have is actually what? Halacha l'Moshe Misinai, and the minority of it is darshaned from the actual text itself. So the Gemara says, Shneimar apia dvarim ha'ileh. Actually, I skipped the pasuk by Rabbi Lazar. Shneimar echtov lo rovi torasi kimo zar nechshavu. Literally, I wrote for them the majority of my Torah, but they treated it like a stranger. Rabbi Yochanan's drasha ki al pi advarim ha'ileh v'idach So what does Rabbi Yochanan do with the pasuk that says, Haksiv, Echtov lo rubi sorasi? What does he do with the pasuk that indicates that the majority of the Torah is from the written law? Hahu atmuhi kametama. This is HaKadosh Baruch Hu wondering out loud, Echtov lo rubi torasi? Should I write down the majority of my Torah for you? Halo kimar zernach shavu. The part that's written, you treat like a stranger, you treat like a foreigner. Ve'idach, the other opinion, Ami aksiv ki al pi advar ma'ila. What does he do? I will say, what does Rabbi Lazar do with Rabbi Yochanan's pasuk of al pi advar ma'ila? Hahu mishum detakifi lemigmerenu. He understands, Rabbi say, that the laws, the halachos l'Moshe misinai, are much more difficult to learn than the laws that are recorded b'chsav. We'll say that makes a lot of sense. Why does it make a lot of sense? Because the laws that are written b'chsav, you have a text in which you are able to darshan, as opposed to what? As opposed to the laws, ultimately, again, that we'll say, the conversation regarding halacha l'Moshe misinai usually goes like this: Gemara discusses a halacha, says halacha l'Moshe misinai, and conversation's over, right? That's pretty much it. So sometimes it's hard to grasp those halachos because we don't have the text with which to engage in halachic discourse. So Rabbi Yehuda bar Nachmani, who was the Turgiman, who was literally the translator, but it really means the spokesperson for Rabbi Shimon Lakish, darshan the following: Ksiv, ksov lecha es hadvarim ha'ila. The pasuk says, write for yourself these things. Uksiv ki al pi hadvarim ha'ila. But yet it says, but literally, ki al pi hadvarim ha'ila, that through the oral transmission of these things. Shabbos said, what he's doing over here is he's contrasting two psukim. Ksov lecha sounds like, again, the Torah has to be written. Ki al pi hadvarim ha'ila sounds like that the bulk of it is oral. So the Gemara says, Hakid. So what's the pshat? Dvarim shebechsav yatara shel amr na'peh. But say those things that are committed to writing, one should not say Baal Peh, one should not say by heart. Dvarim shebal Peh, and things that are transmitted orally should not be confined to writing. We'll see, look at Rashi for just a moment. Dvarim, shamarti lecha b'ksav, now God is talking to Moshe over here, and God is saying to Moshe, things that I gave you in writing, you should teach to Klal Yisrael in writing. Udvarm shebal peh iatarash lekosvan mikan atalamod shatalmud lo nitam likasev ela mipnei shatorah mishtakachas. And similarly, again, things that are transmitted orally should not be committed to writing. Therefore, again, Torah shebal peh should really remain al peh, bal peh, and the only license to record it in writing is why? Is if there's a concern, there's a fear that it may come to be forgotten. So the Gemara says, "Devei Rabbi Yishmael Tana Eila Eila." So in the Yeshiva Rabbi Yishmael, they went and they say following. They contrasted Eila Ata Kosev Viata Kosev Halacha. So we'll say Eila Advarim. These are the things that you have to go ahead and write, but you can't write anything else. You can't write halachas l'Moshe misinai, and you can't write down Torah Shebal Peh. Amar Rabbi Yochanan lo karas HaKadosh Baruch Hu bris im Yisrael ela b'shvil dvarim Shebal Peh. Well, it's actually a very beautiful Gemara. Rabbi Yochanan says that the real covenant, the real bris that HaKadosh Baruch Hu effected with us is only because we accepted the Torah Shebal Peh. Shnei Amar, because the pasuk says, Al pi hadvarim ha'ila karasi itcha bris es Yisrael. Because of these things being a reference to Torah Shebal Peh, I have made a covenant with you. So what's it? Just so you understand on a pashut level. What's the pshat? So the Gemara is saying, because we accept the Torah Shebal Peh, that's really why HaKadosh Baruch Hu made a covenant with us. In other words, Torah Shebechsav by itself is nice, but the real covenant is Torah Shebal Peh. What's the pshat? It's a very simple idea. Torah Shebechsav, it's written. That which is written, it's much easier to believe in, it's much easier to subscribe to. The fact that we are willing to subscribe to the notion of Torah Shebal Peh, which Shabbos say the only thing we have to rely on Torah Shebal Peh is that Moshe Rabbeinu received it from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that represents true emunah. That represents true faith. If it's written, the written word has a certain reality to it. So the fact that we accepted that, understandable. But that we accept Torah Shebal Peh, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, if you're going to accept my Torah Shebal Peh, that level of trust, that level of emunah, that's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu created ultimately, or it's based on that level of trust, that level of emunah, that our covenant with HaKadosh Baruch Hu is affected. A little bit weiter. So we'll say back to the Mishnah. So remember again, the Mishnah said that we keep the Erev Chatzeros in the same home because of Darkei Shalom. So the Gemara says, my timer, what's the reason? Now what does that mean? Ilema mishum covered. So we'll say, if you want to say it's about covered, that we were afraid that if we move the Erev Chatzeros to someone else's home, then what? It's going to be a slight to the covered of the Balabas, who originally housed it. So the Gemara says, well, if that's the case, Ahu Shipura, Davim Meikara Beirav Yosef, Ulubasov Beirava, Ulubasov Beirav Yosef, Ulubasov Beabai, Ulubasov Beirava. So we'll say, so what about the Shipura? So we'll say, the Shipura is talking about the shofar of Erev Shabbos. Remember, the Gemara Masech Shabbos discusses that they used to sound a number of different shofar blasts, over the course, ultimately, of Erev Shabbos to indicate the arrival of Shabbos. So we'll say, so that shofar used to be stored at the home of the Rosh Yeshiva. And when the Rosh Yeshiva died, they took it to the home of the next Rosh Yeshiva, and so on and so forth. So you see from here, you take something that's very important, and you're transferring homes, and yet we're not concerned about what? About offending anyone's kavod. To which the Gemara says, Ela mishum chashada. The answer over here is not because of kavod. The answer over here is because of chashad. In other words, what does that mean? I will say that if over the last number of years we've kept the Erev in someone's home, and then someone walks into the home, let's say they kept it in the Schwartz home, and someone walks into the Schwartz home on Erev Shabbos, and what? Or on Shabbos, and doesn't see the Erev, people will assume that what? That there is no Erev. They won't know about the change of location. Therefore, in order to avoid any level of suspicion of wrongdoing on the part of the members of the Chatzar, we keep the Erev in the same place all the time. Weiter. Bar Shukar of La'ama. So also remember again, the next thing the Mishnah said is that if you have a bunch of farmers, a bunch of fields that are literally off the channel. So remember again, each field has to irrigate. The way they irrigate is they siphon off the water from the channel. They dam off the channel and they take the water into their own field and then again pull up the dam and allow the water to continue down. So the Gemara discussed who gets the first. I don't know. It doesn't sound right, but who gets damming rights? Does that make sense? All right, it's gonna. Yeah, cool. Right? So who gets damming rights first? So again, the first field, so to speak, on the course of the channel gets damming rights first. So the Gemara says the following: Itmar b'nei nara. So let's say when you have a number of fields situated alongside a river, so who gets damming rights first? Rav Amar Tasoy Shasumai Beresha. Rav says ultimately again the field most downstream gets damming rights first. Ushmuel Amar Eloi Shasu Maya Beresha. Shmuel says no, the field most upstream gets damming rights first. So the Gemara says, let's analyze this. B'demezel koli amalo pligi. So I'll say if the river has the ability to go ahead and just continue to flow. Now what does it mean? Look at Rashi. Rashi says over b'demezel koli amalo pligi. Im ilan sochrin asanar ela dolin va'olchin v'anar Moshe chipshuto koli amalo pligi shekalarotze lidlos yadla. So we'll say if in order to irrigate the fields you don't have to dam off the river, but rather everyone could just draw off water without damming off the river, then everyone agrees that anyone could take the water whenever they want. Where does the argument come up? Ki pligi b'miskar ve'ashkuye. So we'll say Machlokas comes up when literally they have to dam up the river in order to divert the river into the field. Shmuel Amar Ilai Shasu Maya Beresha. So Shmuel says the field most upstream has the ability to dam it off first. The Amri, because they say Anan Makruvinan Tfei. We are the closest to the source of the river. Therefore, again, we get water rights first. Rav says no, the field most downstream gets damming rights first. Why? Because again, let the water flow as it's supposed to. We are downstream, and therefore, again, if you let the river flow naturally, we would be naturally the first ones to be able to receive the water. So Tanan, we learned Bar Hakarav La'ama Mismale Rishon Mimei Darkei Shalom. Yet we learned in the Mishnah that Rabbosai, again, when you have fields that border on the channel, so whoever's irrigation ditch is closest to the channel, he has the ability to go ahead and dam off the channel first and take the water. Why Mimei Darkei Shalom? So the Gemara says, Tirgima Shmuel Liba Derav. So we'll say, so Shmuel understood that according to Rav, what this means is, this is just an amma, this is a channel that naturally fills up the pit. You don't have to dam off anything. So we'll say, if that's the case, at the end of the day, that the channel naturally fills up the pit. So why does the Mishnah tell me that the first guy has the right to fill up his pit first? I mean, the pit is filling up on its own. To which the Gemara says, Sachar miskar v'ashkai behindiza. daza behin daza. So Amra thought Ratzabosai. So go ahead and maybe we should tell the first field that he's obligated to dam up the channel. The channel shouldn't flow into his field, and he should just draw off the channel like everyone else, but not allow the channel to actively fill up the entire pit. Kamashon, that's not the case. Kamashon, Rabbi say that's what? That we allow him to go ahead and we allow the channel to naturally fill up his irrigation ditch. Rabbi say just one more line. Amar Avuna bar Tachlifa, hashta delo itmar, hilchas alo kimar velo kimar, Kol the Olim Gvar. This is quite fascinating. Since we did not decide the halacha like Rav or like Shmuel, meaning again, that who gets first rights? Who gets first rights? The fields upstream or the fields downstream means a machlokes. Kol the Olim Gvar. But Kol the Olim Gvar means whoever is strongest wins. In other words, whoever, I'm sorry? Oh, so right. So right. This seems to stare a little bit the sugya of Darkei Shalom. So we'll see what this means. We'll see. We're going to stop over here. But again, what the Gemara is saying over here is the Machlokes Rav and Shmuel is not resolved, and therefore, essentially, whoever gets to dam off there, whoever is the best dammer. Well, again, I'm definitely misusing this word, right? But again, whoever has the ability to dam off the water first, to channel off the water first, that's the one ultimately, again, who gets the rights. Which we'll say, Kol Olim Gvar is another way of saying, you all have equal rights. That's really what it's saying is, we're not really mechalik between upstream and downstream. If your field is off the river, if you are irrigated off the river, everyone has equal water rights. So whoever goes ahead and manages to siphon off the water first, ultimately again has the ability to do so. Now, both said we'll stop over here, but we'll see again, this is true as long as your damming actions do not go ahead and adversely impact someone else. If what you do adversely impacts someone else, Amir Hashem, to be continued tomorrow. Shkoyach.